Hi everyone, Shane R. Monroe here. You're probably considering getting a dock for your Steam Deck, but there's so many to choose from. What's the right one? What's the best one? Should I pay $90? Should I pay $30? We're going to help you answer those questions in this video coming right up, so stick around. All right, let's start off with the Anker 7-in-1 sort of do-it-yourself solution. This has a 3D printed case that you buy separately. It has a gigabit Ethernet port on the side. Everything is pretty well laid out. I did have to put an elbow on here just to sort of give the cord a little bit of slack. So that's something you may or may not have. The USB ports are in the front, which is really cool. But you can see this gives it a little more height than most of the other docks, which would be great if you have a keyboard sitting in front of it. I put some little rubber feet on here. Overall, it's a really nice little solution, and it has an SD slot on the back for both a regular and micro SD card. Sort of a unique thing to this particular solution. I kind of like it, and we'll talk more about the specs in a moment. Next up, we have the NewQ Clip On hub. Now, I did a full video on this one already, but we'll cover it. HDMI, 2 USB-A, 2.0s, power in, and of course this kickstand, making this a more unique solution than some of the other docks on here. It clips on easily, and you can see from the inset that the cables all come out the top, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad. It's easier to get to these ports, but it can be inconvenient having them all stick out. The kickstand does a fine job of what it needs to do, and you can see it doesn't block any vents. An interesting but maybe slightly esoteric solution, and like I said, plugging these cables in can be great, but they all stick out. It'll depend on your particular use case. It's an interesting thing to have for this market. Okay, now we're on to the official Steam Deck dock, the most expensive version in our video here. The dock is, listen, it's premium. It's got soft rubberized base. It's got rubberized insert to keep your deck nice and safe on the inside. The tolerances are perfect. On the back, we have DP, HDMI, power, Ethernet, and 3 USB 3.0 plugs, which is fantastic. Nothing on the sides, nothing in the front. They also have this little lip thing to help you take off the plug. It sounds silly, but when you have to do it over and over again, it actually helps. It plugs in perfect. The cable's the perfect length. Listen, this was made for the deck, and it absolutely 100% shows. On to the fan favorite JSAux HB0603. The Ethernet port is on the side, which I don't love, and you can see there's nothing on the other side. On the back side, we have straight power, HDMI, and 3 USB 3.0s, which puts it on par with the official dock. Now, what we don't have here is, this is not well done in here. Listen, it's got padding, it's got some rubberized things, but this doesn't custom fit. It's a little wiggly. It doesn't fit snug in there. It looks like a generic dock, maybe for a tablet or something. I wasn't thrilled with the way that it sits in here. Now, if you have a skin or something, you might want that extra clearance. But for me, that was kind of let me down just a little bit about this particular unit. All right, let's get into the meat of things. Let's take a look at the specs. That's right. Let's take a look. We'll start with the price. Obviously, the most pricey entry in the selection, of course, is the official Steam dock at $90. Next up, we go down to the Anker 7-in-1 Plus case. The case is about $25. You'll have to have it 3D printed somewhere. That's about the price it'll run. And I'll have a link in the description below where you can get one printed if you happen to have one of these and all you need is the case. But at $85, there's a couple of positives in here that might warrant that price. But going down next, we have the JSAux at $50. And finally, the cheapest on the lot is the NewQ Clip On hub. And there are obvious reasons for that. As we move forward, you will see those. Next up, let's talk about HDMI ports. So we're going to start with the green one. The Steam Deck dock itself allows you to have 4K 60 and 1440p at 120 hertz. Definitely the best spec of it, but certainly not something that everybody needs. Maybe you need 120 hertz at 1440p. Most people are going to be very, very content at 4K 60. Moving on down the chain, most of these do have 4K 60, including the JSAux and the NewQ Clip. Last but not least, we have the Anker 7-in-1, which is an interesting bag here. It does 4K 30 and 1440p 60. Very interesting. Again, maybe you have a use case for this. Just like the Steam Dock, it's very interesting. I think most people would be fine with any one of these except maybe the 4K 30. That might prove to be a thorn in some people's sides. Moving on to DisplayPort, we all know that there's only one dock out there that has said DisplayPort, from this collection at least, and that is the Steam Dock. It's worth noting, though, that while you do have an additional port, so there are 2 video ports on the Steam Dock, HDMI and DP, I would like to point out that there is no DP to HDMI support. So if you have a DP to HDMI cable, it's not going to work. You're going to plug it into this other DP port, hoping to get 2 HDMI out, and it's not going to work for you. That's something to keep in mind if you were looking at the dock as having 2 outputs. There is a caveat to that. Moving on to USB ports, everything is pretty much same-o. We'll start off with the NewQ Clip. Yes, they have only 2 ports and they are 2.0. So listen, great for a mouse, great for a keyboard, but not really great for anything else. Of course, 3.0 is the standard going up the chain. The Anker 7-in-1 has 2 USB ports, but they are in the front, which I thought was sort of an advantage. A lot of people like to have easy front access to USB ports. If you have a particular use case, this might be a great solution for you. Obviously, having 3 USB 3.0s is great. Both the JSAux and the Steam Deck Dock have this. While the Steam Dock does show as 3.1, it is Gen 1 3.1, so we're still talking about 5 gigabits per second throughput. There is no advantage to 3.1 in this case. So either one of these guys is going to be a winner. In special use cases, this might be your winner. And if you really don't need high-speed storage on your USB ports, this doesn't put the NewQ out of the running. For Ethernet, all 3 of the high-end ones support gigabit wired Ethernet. Of course, the NewQ Clip does not have any sort of Ethernet available, so that could be a deal killer for some of you. Power in and out. This is where things get a little sketchy, so we're going to save that one for the end. Included power, only one of these docks comes with its own dedicated power supply, which of course is a Steam Deck power brick itself at 45 watts. Most people don't really want the extra expense of buying a dock with an additional power pack. For those of you that travel, those of you who want to keep one of your power bricks in with your case for travel, having an extra one is certainly a good deal. Of course, neither of these other solutions have power included. You'll have to go get your own. Some extras I'd like to point out for each one of these. I didn't really have any extras to point out for the Steam Dock, other than it fits like a glove. It's premium. Everything feels like top-notch. It feels like it was made for the deck, and you do have the backing of Valve behind it. There may or may not ever be any sort of advantage to that. Time will tell. And I will say, though, that the NewQ Clip On hub can be a good use case for certain people. Interestingly enough, of all 4 docks, the very cool, highly coveted GB operator, which is a piece of hardware that allows you to plug in Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance cards into a little card reader and play them right on your deck. There's only one of these docks that it works out of the box, and that is the JSAux. If you want to put an additional hub or some other type of device, you can get it working on all of these other ones. But for some reason, only the JSAux works with the GB operator out of the box. If you don't know what the GB operator is, probably doesn't matter to you. But for a lot of people, this could be a selling point. So we want to make sure that I mention that. Finally, the last extra I want to highlight is something that may or may not matter to you. And that is the fact that the Anker 7-in-1 solution with the case has an SD card slot and a micro SD card slot available for your use. If you are a photographer, you pull your SD card out of your camera a lot, you're dumping pictures onto your deck. There's a whole plethora. Having an additional micro SD card would be fantastic to put games on. There's a whole plethora of reasons why the extras here could make sense to you. So while the Anker 7-in-1 has some downsides to it, for certain use cases, it could really shine. All right, let's talk about the power in and out. Again, as I mentioned, this is a little bit on the confusing side. The only one that really discloses what the hub uses is the Anker 7-in-1. It says it'll accept input of up to 60 watts and it will output everything that it doesn't use, which is 48 watts, because it needs 12 watts for the hub itself. Now, you only need 45 for the Steam Deck, so this is not, I made this yellow, but there's really nothing wrong with it, unless you need something that will draw additional power on the hub. If it does, you might drop down below 45, and that would cause you some heartache, possibly with fast charging the deck. The JSAux says we can do 100 in and 100 out. I don't know how that works because, as you can see from the Anker 7-in-1, the dock itself has to suck down some power, including the items you have plugged into it. So while it says 100 in, 100 out, we sort of have to take that with a grain of salt because we don't know exactly how much it will take. However, being able to pass through even 85 watts would be very advantageous. We'll skip the dock for a moment and onto the NewQ Clip. It takes 100 watts in and it outputs specifically 45 watts because that's what this hub, clip-on hub, was designed for, specifically for the Steam Deck. So there's no reason to output anything higher than 45 watts in this case. But being able to have 100 watts in means you have absolute tons and tons and tons of power to drive these almost useless USB-A 2.0 slots. Right. So Steam Dock, no published specs. All it says is pass-through power, pass-through power. So just like the JSAux, probably 100 in, 100 out, I would say that's possibly true. I didn't hook up any sort of device to test this, but I'm assuming the more you put in, the more can come out, and the dock itself will use something above and beyond what that is. So we don't know. That's the bottom line. We don't know with the Steam Dock, and that unknown could be bad, it could be good. We just don't know, but take that as you will. All right, so I think now that we have all the specs, we've seen all the devices, it's time for me to render a verdict on which of these dock solutions is for you. So what's the answer? Which of these great docks should you be getting? Well, only you can answer that. Every one of these docks has something good about them and something not so good about them. I do like the official dock. I think it fits well. That's what I use as my daily driver. But say this JSAux dock, probably great for 90% of the people out there, costs almost half the price. And who knows? Some of you out here probably could use this. This is probably the greatest solution ever. So the answer is, there is no answer. You've got all the data you need to make the most informed decision possible on which dock is right for you. So which one do you own? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Help my viewers make an informed decision based on this data and yours. I'm Shane R. Monroe. We'll see you next time. Take care.